Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Safest Family on the Block, where knowledge is power. My name's Jason, and joining me today is Kevin Daniels of Bully 101 or Bully Prevention 101. How are you today, sir?
Good. How you doing?
I'm doing really well so far. I'm really excited to have you on the show. Now,
Thank
Kevin and I met over Instagram, where he's got some really interesting materials coming along. But instead of just reading his bio, I thought I'd ask you, Kevin, tell us a bit about your story, how you got here, and what you're doing with it.
You know what? I was, to start off, of course, I was one of those kids that was bullied when I was young. So I went through the throes of that. And I think one of the worst parts about being bullied is actually the lack of confidence, the lack of self-confidence that I think actually creates the victim mentality, and that actually creates an easy target for the bully. So and bullied, plus it's also having that lack of self-confidence. So that's something I struggled with through school. And later on, I when I was in middle school, high school, I really worked to get rid of that lack of self-confidence and really build my self-confidence. Took me years to figure out how to do it. And then once I had confidence when I was an adult, then I actually went back and I started taking martial arts and self-defense, and something I wanted to do when I was a kid that could have helped back then, but I didn't even have the confidence to do that. So I started taking, I started off in traditional martial arts, and I got my black belt in an art called Hwa Do after about 5 years. And I moved into more self-defense stuff. And I was recently certified as an instructor with Burton Richardson's MMA for the Street, which I think is the most incredible training program out there. And we're also working in a BJJ for the Street. So we're working some pretty fun stuff with some friends. But once I got my black belt, I had some friends and family come to me and say, hey, my child's getting bullied. Can you teach them how to fight? And of course, I could teach them just some basics how to fight, but I wanted to teach them how not to fight in the first place. So I started putting together the best preventative program I could, and I'm coming up with this Bully Defense 101.
Outstanding. And one of the points you just made there about confidence, because one of the things about bullying is there's that spiral where you don't feel very confident because bullies are predators and predators are cowards, and cowards attack people they perceive as weak. They jump on the kid who has lower self-confidence, and being bullied gives you even less self-confidence. It gives you hit right in your self-worth. So you're less confident the next day, which makes more bullies more likely to pick on you. And it's a downward spiral of unpleasantness that can make middle school especially just terrible.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think you nailed it when you said the bully is usually a coward. They're only going to pick. I like to say that the bully doesn't want to pick a fight. They want to pick on someone they think won't fight back. So he or she wants an easy target. So if we can raise our children self-confidence, raise their self-esteem, and look more like a challenger, even if they don't feel that way on the inside, even if they could just look a little more confident and act a little more confident, hopefully that might be just enough to keep the bully walking on by them instead of walking into them.
Yeah, for even in adult self-defense, there was that study that it wasn't Watson and Crick, but I always, that's the name that always pops in, but they're the DNA guys, where they took a bunch of people in jail for violent felonies and showed them video of people walking on a certain intersection, I think it was in New York, and said, okay, pick out the person you would try to victimize. And across gender, across race, across offense, across background, they all picked out the same people. And then they went on and analyzed the specific body language aspects that made all of these felons say, oh, that guy's not going to fight back. And there's an earlier school age version of that going on with the bullies.
Interesting. Yeah, you're right. I actually heard, I've been listening, your Safest Family on the Block is amazing. I've been listening to some of your podcasts, and I listened to that report on that. And that's just, it's fascinating that bullies pick on the same people. And, I can see it too when I drive by the middle school down here. You can see the kids that have a lot of self-confidence. They're walking down the street. They have their head up. They have their eyes up. They're talking to other people. They're paying attention. They're aware of what's going on around them. They're walking like they have some confidence. But then you can also see the kids that you almost know have no self-confidence. It's the same posture. I call it the sheep posture. I say there's wolves and sheep. And what does a sheep do? The sheep has their head down, their eyes are down on the ground, their face is down in the dirt. They don't even see the wolf coming. And you can kind of see that lack of self-confidence just in a posture of a kid walking down the street.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So your program, I'm imagining it has some very specific advice about how we can teach our kids to stand up straighter, look more alert, be less of an attractive target. What are some of those things that we can do as a parent to help our kids be less attractive to the bullies out there?
I think there's three different ways to interact with the bully, and I think there's the mental game that's using your building your confidence inside your brain. It's a mental game. It's also avoidance, it's awareness, it's evasion, all the mental ways you can help deal with bully, sometimes in advance. There's things you can do in advance. And then there's a verbal game that if the bully actually gets close enough that it becomes verbal, there's different ways you can help diffuse the situation or end the situation verbally. So mental, verbal, and then there's physical. And then I think there's non-violent ways to hopefully avoid a bully confrontation. And that one of those is just distance. The more distance you have, the safer you are, obviously. And if you can have, if you're on the other side of the school, if you're in another zip code, there's no more problem. So distance is good. There's posture, like we're talking about, that confident posture. There's teaching. Probably the first thing someone should learn in self-defense is just the basic stance. It's, getting the hands up in front of your face, and just this posture, like the prayer posture. Hey man, take it easy. Just these simple things can hopefully use the situation. Plus also keep us safe. If a punch does come flying in, we have something in front of our face. You see it unfortunately on some of the YouTube video. You'll see where someone gets in someone's face and they don't have any confidence, they're scared, and they freeze, and their hands are down by their side. When the punch comes in, there's nothing blocking it. So that's non-violent things that we can do. And then there's also learning self-defense. And I think learning self-defense is one of the best ways to build self-confidence, because it applies directly towards the bully. So there's building our children's confidence. There's a lot of ways you can do that. There's immediate ways you can do that. There's like the power pose. Everyone's heard of the power pose. There's power moves. There's power verbs. There's power words. A lot of things you can use to immediately change your confidence and change your state and like snap to your attention. Then there's long-term things like journaling all the good things happening in your life. So you look for more the next day. So there's confidence. I think it's one of the most important things for parents to help instill in our kids. There's lots of ways to do that again. And then there's learning self-defense, which I think is needed because, like you said, you pointed out middle schoolers. There's a study that shows that almost 33%, 32.4% of all middle schoolers are physically attacked every year. So that's 1/3 of all kids in middle school. So if your child goes to school with two buddies, one of them is probably being physically attacked by a bully here. So I think learning self-defense is crucial, because you need that plan B. You can do everything you can to avoid it, but sometimes the bully won't give you a choice.
Absolutely. And that maps so much to self-defense advice for adults, where, the book that just came out, of the violence prevention book that I just had, kind of maps avoiding violence from the preparation stage to the awareness stage to de-escalation, and then finally to escape, or, if necessary, self-defense. But the preparation is all those things: the journaling, the going to a martial arts class or another class. I don't have any data on this, but my observation is that a kid needs one thing they can be proud of and good at, and that can be martial arts, that can be running. I see your picture there behind you of you beating one race or another. It can be parkour, it can be piano, it can be running a really good Dungeons and Dragons game, it can be whatever it is. Just the one thing to be proud of and good at, where you get to hang out with other people who value that, and just that, whatever it is. And that's the kind of preparation. And teaching kids maybe some role play, and then you get to that awareness where they're aware of their own stance, they're aware of trouble areas, and then you get to the de-escalation, whether that's cracking the joke that makes the entire classroom laugh so the bully's not feeling empowered anymore, or whether it's knowing how to defuse the situation verbally, and then to knowing when to beat, feed, and run away, or how to fight. There was a very interesting point that you made, that this particular posture, the hey man, chill out. The similarities between this and a classic Muay Thai stance is it's there. You've got the wall between their arms and legs and your face. So this looks de-escalating, it looks calming. Exactly. But it is also protective.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you're absolutely right. I think this is one of the first things that you should you should be learning in any self-defense class is getting your hands up and trying to diffuse the situation. There's and like you said, if this doesn't help, if the bully still decides to attack me, you got something, at least breaking that first punch so you don't get that sucker punch. And then it's knowing how to back yourself up and knowing some self-defense to yourself the confidence to be able to stand up for yourself physically. And there's an interesting study by a psychologist named Karen Healy and the University of Queensland, Australia. And she said they basically found that there's 3 types of victims to bullies. And there's the first victim that is called, that they label the pacifist. And in this study, a pacifist is not a good term. Normally it's kind of a good term, but in this study, it's not a good term. It's basically the kid that freezes, and when the bully attacks, they just crumple down to the ground and just shrivel up and let the bully beat on them. The problem with that is the bully learns that they can come back the next day and beat on them again with no consequences, no repercussions, and come back the next day and again and again and again. And that keeps going. Then there's number 2, the one that actually does fight back, but they're unskilled at it, and they still lose the fight. The bullies, like are typically larger, they're bigger, they have friends. They will typically win anyway because they actually have training. They might not have formal training, but they've done this before. They know how to attack you. So they will still beat up. The second person that fights back with no skills ends up getting beat up. And sometimes that even turns into retaliation. The bully gets mad that they fought back and come back the next day, beat them up again with no repercussions. And then there's a third victim that knows how to fight and fight back effectively. And that person teaches the bully real quick that they will pay a price. There will be consequences, and the bully leaves them alone immediately. So to kids self-defense defeated.
I think it's really important that you're drawing parallels to adult self-defense, that if you look like the person who will not be worth the trouble of whatever's in your wallet, the robber, the mugger is going to go over here. They're not going to bother you. And I think that's one of the through lines about bullying is when we were growing up, bullying was a rite of passage almost. It was just boys being boys. It was, sorry, buddy, middle school sucks. Go sock them in the nose. That was the most of the bullying training most of us got when we were kids. But we're dealing with stalking and assault when we were talking about bullying. And I think for the adults to, without taking care of everything for our kids, because that's its own kind of toxic, but taking bullying seriously and making sure that the other adults responsible for our kids' safety take bullying seriously. I also get asked a lot, hey, my kid's being bullied, what do I do? And the piece of advice I give the most often is, okay, what you need to do is make not protecting your child a much bigger pain in the ass of the administration at your school than protecting your child. You need to make not doing their job less convenient than doing their job. And for all of us to take bullying more seriously, I think is an important part of solving this problem. Absolutely.
And if you don't mind, I do have my YouTube channel.
Absolutely.
BullyDefense101. You can find me on YouTube. I have something called The Basics, a playlist called The Basics. And that basically walks you from beginning to end on some of the things as a parent we should be doing. And the child, we should start off by building our foundation, building our support group, documenting everything going on in digital form and written form, and how to work with a school, because sometimes schools are, there's a lot of amazing teachers out there. There's a lot of amazing staff and faculty out there that are doing the best they can to help keep our kids safe. But then there's other schools that are horror stories are coming out of these schools. So there are some questions you should be asking your school ahead of time. If you know there's a problem, documenting what their bully policies are, what their procedures are. And then there's ways you can work with them. There's ways like, if you have an issue, you might want to keep it. If you have an issue with your child and the bully at school, you might want to keep it confidential, because sometimes retaliation obviously is a common occurrence. So sometimes you can work with a school to make sure they're doing their part, but have them keep it confidential so they don't talk to the bully immediately, but they're keeping an extra special eye out for your child in the halls, at lunch, on the recess, so all the teachers know what's going on. And then if you have to step in to end the abuse immediately, then you talk to them, have the school talk to the bully immediately. And there's conflict mediation, where hopefully your school might have a skilled conflict mediator, a psychologist, or a school counselor that can do it. There's also peer mediation, but that's actually shown to backfire, and that's for kids to be the mediators, and that doesn't work. But there's a lot. Anyway, on my YouTube channel, there's quite a few ways you can work with a school, because again, sometimes the schools do drop the ball, and what do you do to run it up the flagpole?
Absolutely. And yeah, absolutely, I recommend everybody check that out. Those basics are so educational for the adults. And I think 2 points that really need underscoring are, as an adult, know what the bullying policy is at your school, and know which adult is most responsible for making that policy reality.
Yep.
And that's a matter, sometimes that takes some research. One of the best pieces of child safety advice I got, and this is from a guy who was in Marine Force Recon. So this is a high-speed, low-drag violence professional. He said, you want to keep your kids safe at school, volunteer at the school.
Yeah.
Whether you just go in and, cut out art supplies in the back, go coach the chess team, go, assist and coach the cheerleading team, whatever it is, because then you know the building, you know the people know you.
Yep.
And it makes a huge difference in your ability to advocate for your child if they are being bullied.
Amen. Yeah. And there's this, the standard levels of running it up the flagpole. There's talking to the teacher directly, and if the teacher doesn't do anything about it, then it's going to the vice principal. If that doesn't work, go to the principal, and then it's the school board, and then it's the superintendent. The superintendent hasn't handled it by then it's going to the county school board, and you can even go to the state level, where you start pressure on the school from above. And I've actually talked to people that have had to do that, and it became real effective having the state pressure on. And then there's even the federal level, the Office of Education, Office for Civil Rights too. So there's ways to make sure something happens, and they need to be watching out for your kid. They need to, I think the NSBA website says the school, it has legal and ethical obligations to provide a safe physical and emotional environment for your child.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't want to paint, the education professionals are underappreciated, underpaid, good people doing their best, but they are also incredibly pressed for time.
Yeah.
And so, unfortunately, one of the ways that we can make sure they prioritize keep Americans safe is to make things more time consuming for them if they don't. And again, I don't want to paint anybody as a bad guy. 90% of teachers are fantastic humans doing the best they can in an untenable situation. But if they're not helping our kids, sometimes we need to make the situation a little worse.
Yeah. And I hope I don't want to step with others. There's so many amazing teachers and staff out there building our future rock stars. So for sure.
Absolutely. But and if we need to help put the finger on the scales a little bit, we can do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, in terms of self-defense, another one I just wanted to mention, this was a while ago that I looked into this, so things might have changed for them, but the Gracie brothers bully defense system was really, really compelling, although it is not a beginner's system by any chance, but it was just basically bad guy comes at you, you do a duck under and you get behind them, take their back, and then say, hey man, settle down. And if they don't settle down, then you kick their feet out from them, get your hooks in.
Yep.
And hold them there like this, say, hey man, settle down. And if that doesn't work, you get them in the rear naked choke. Say, no, seriously, you want to settle down.
Yep.
And then if that doesn't happen, then you choke them out. Which, I wouldn't teach that to a 6-year-old, but even in middle school, having the skills to not only keep yourself safe. 1 second, someone's trying to call me.
Oh, no problem.
But having the skills to not only keep yourself safe, but to defend yourself in a graduated, stepped way that you don't have to hurt anybody.
Yeah.
You've been training in martial arts for a long time. I have as well. And there was that point in your training where you realize, not only can I keep myself safe from, say, one individual who's not armed, I can do that without hurting that person. That is a point in your martial arts journey that's really powerful and empowering. And I think we can, if we want to get our kids into self-defense, that is definitely a good place to be. And as you point out, some of the MMA training is excellent for that because it is sports-based and the goal is control and submission, not maiming somebody.
Right. Yeah, I actually heard I heard someone put it very very accurately. Even in the UFC, like the MMA, cage matches, jiu-jitsu ends up usually being one of the most what's the word? It's one of the most
Mm.
like hospitable, one of the least violent ways to end a fight. And you put someone in a position where they might have their arm behind their head or behind their back, and you can stop a fight without hurting them. And the same thing with the bully. You can get the bully in a compromising position where they don't have anywhere else to go, and you can say, we can keep going, or we can stop right now. What do you want to do? So yeah.
And from an adult self-defense standpoint, that can sometimes be a problem, because you lock somebody up in a GG Katami hold, and they give up. I mean, what are you going to do? Put them in handcuffs? I mean, you let them up, 9 times out of 10 they're going to hit you. But in bullying situations, often that is sufficient to make sure that you have established your bona fides with the bully and move on with your day.
Exactly.
I do want to kind of circle back to, though, that we're martial artists. There may be some survivor bias here, but we love martial arts. Martial arts is great,
for sure.
But if your kid's not into martial arts, finding the one thing and leaning into that with everything we have, all the support we have, not, well, I want my kid to take Muay Thai, but he wants to learn the violin. That everything you can to support that violin. Get them, give them the skills, give them the tools, give them the peer group, whether they can have that thing to be good at and proud of.
Yes.
And just that confidence will lessen the likelihood that they would ever need to use self-defense.
Absolutely. And self-confidence goes back to just your posture walking around the school. You have your head up, you have your eyes up, you're paying attention. I saw one of your videos. It was fascinating. I think it was it Gary Casenberry, and he was talking about awareness. And I think you had a great point during that interview too, where you said, there's all the mixed martial arts, there's all the self-defense tech, there's the techniques and the tools, there's all these amazing things that people are looking for online. But if you get to the point where you actually need one of those, it's too late. You shouldn't have gotten that far. Hopefully you can avoid with your awareness and avoidance. Hopefully you can avoid even getting into a bad position with the bully. Hopefully you can avoid a fight, because you can get into a fight and win the fight, but still have a broken nose or a broken hand, and that's not a win. I think the only fight you win is one that you avoid. And I think awareness is such a key. And that whole interview with Gary Casenberry was amazing about awareness too.
Yeah, Gary's been on a couple of times, Gary Quessenberry, and he's got a series of books. Spotting Danger Before It Spots You is the first one, and there's two others in the series right now. He's got one for travel coming out, and it's all about what he learned about situational awareness as a federal air marshal and working in federal prisons, and then teaching that knowledge to his children as they were growing up. And they're fantastic books. I recommend them very, very highly. And he does a very good job. Most people who operate at that level, their context is so different from ours. Their assumption of of their own combative ability is so much above ours. The amount of time they've spent training for and thinking about harming another human being is just way above us and our clients, right? Your average soccer mom or minivan dad is going to hesitate to hurt somebody, and that bad guy isn't going to hesitate to hurt you back. And their context is so different, even down to vocabulary, that a lot of those books are kind of opaque to civilians like us. Gary's books are not. They're an excellent introduction. So we've been talking mostly about physical bullying now, but of course there's the other side of bullying, which is something that we thankfully did not have to deal with, which is cyberbullying. And so can you talk to us a bit about that? This is a nut that a lot of parents are trying to crack, and we did not grow up with it. It's very different. I think sometimes we minimize it because it's on the internet and it's not real. Right. But, air quotes around not real. But what are some things, some insights you've found about cyberbullying? Because it's even more pervasive, and in some ways we're finding more damaging than classic bullying, as we experienced.
Definitely. Matter of fact, I got to speak not too long ago. I got to speak at one of the boys and girls clubs around here, and I spoke to the high school students. There were about maybe 40 of them, and I asked them who in this room has witnessed bullying, and they all put their hand up. And then I was interested, and I wanted to do my own research, so I asked, well, who's seen verbal bullying? And no one raised their hand up. I said, well, who's seen physical bullying? And no one raised their hand up. I go, who's seen cyberbullying? They all raised their hand back up. Everyone in that room pretty much had seen and witnessed cyberbullying. It's the new way to bully. I mean, absolutely. So Yeah, there's a lot of things we can do. As parents, we need to put some controls and maybe have some controls over our child's cell phone, computer, if we can. I mean, if we're supplying them, we're supplying the service. Maybe we have some abilities to monitor what's going on, and then from there, it's just documenting what's going on, being aware of what's going on with your child and what they're dealing with. It's also, not putting the digital device aside and just talking with your child and seeing what's going on in their life and what they're talking about. Maybe they'll bring up that there's something going online and social, but then it's documenting everything online. You can capture screenshots of text chains, of email chains, of posts that people are saying out there. You got to document this. Matter of fact, I think there's a gray area legally right now that the schools are looking at. Is number one, if someone's cyberbullying someone during school hours, especially on school, of course, computers, yeah, that's definitely the school needs to know and is part of that response. But then they're also saying if people are being cyberbullied during school hours on their personal devices, it's still a problem. It's still a responsibility of the school. Now some are saying even if it's on the weekend, the school needs to know what's going on, that they're still responsible for your children while they're in your care, and that includes cyberbullying. So there's a lot of attention we need to pay. We need to be following up. We need to be documenting everything. We need to be reporting what needs to be reported to the school so they're in the loop what's going on. And there's all kinds of other things. There's apps that can help monitor your children and also shut down problematic sites or issues with bullying. There's teaching our children to shut down and turn off sometimes. Our kids can take their phone into their room at night and stay up for hours, and unfortunately that's not good for their mental side, even if they're not being bullied. I think there was a study I saw that someone that's on social media 61 minutes a day is 300% more likely to develop depression. This includes minors too. So just 1 hour a day, 3 times more likely to develop depression. And then beyond that, 3 or 4 or 5 hours a day, there's a psychologist, I think Gene Twenge and San Diego State University, and they said even the chance of suicide increased up to 4 or 5 hours. So it's a problem, and it needs to be monitored and addressed. And hopefully we can teach our kids it's okay to shut that down and not measure their lives in how many likes or friends they get online.
There's a Cat Code, who is one of the people I trust the most about cybersecurity. And this is not unique to her, but she encourages it, is actually having a written contract with your kids about cell phone use, about mobile device use. And you can download some online, but they're all terrible, largely because they're not robust enough, and also they don't include parental commitments. But where you write a contract where you say, okay, I'm your parent, I promise, that I'll pay for your service. They recommend that we pay for our service because that gives us a justification for control. We promise that we're not going to freak out if somebody else is doing something to you on your phone, because a lot of parents, they get angry about it, and then suddenly, oh, you're being cyber stalked. Well, let's take your phone away. You make your promises, and then the child makes their commitments. For example, I'm gonna turn off my phone at dinner time. One of the big ones they recommend is, I will not use my phone in the bathroom or in the bedroom under any circumstances. So that, especially for middle school kids, early high school, that means they're always using their phone in a public area, so that you can see the change on the look on their face if something's going on, so that they're not tempted to take a photograph they'll regret later because they're in the middle of the living room. And also, because the other part of that is that just immediately prevents the going to bed at 10 o'clock and scrolling until 1. So that is one potential solution there among many solutions in what is a complex and evolving situation.
For sure. Absolutely.
Yeah. Very good. Well, I want to thank you so much for coming on today. But before I go, what's the really smart question I should have asked that I haven't?
Oh man, I think it goes back to the awareness, the avoidance, the evasion. I think again, the only fight that you win is the one that you avoid. I wish our kids would walk down the street with their heads up and their eyes up, paying attention and being aware, and just, if you can see something early enough, you can hopefully avoid it. And I think that's the ultimate win for our children. So, and that goes back to confidence. So how can we build confidence into our children? It's the number one question. There's lots of ways to do that. And again, if you don't mind, on my YouTube
Absolutely.
channel, Bully Defense 101, I have a whole playlist on confidence techniques. There's lots of ways to build confidence with our kids, and that's the number one thing. And confidence is a gift that they take through the rest of their life too. So
yeah,
I think the number one priority.
Yeah, the numbers on that, on confidence, improving your academic performance in college, job performance, and let's not pretend there aren't bullies in the workplace, because that's the thing.
True.
And if we can send our kids out in the world already not looking like a target and already knowing the 3 ways to change your body language and the 3 questions to ask just at the right moment to get that person to realize, you know what, I'm gonna go over here.
Yep.
A story about workplace bullying that was relayed to me recently by a friend of mine who teaches martial arts was a young, petite Asian woman there was a guy who was showing her inappropriate photos, making inappropriate comments. And so she just started calling him to his face, and when referring to him in any way at the workplace, creepy stalker dude. So creepy stalker dude brought me his report today, and and the guy come up, hey, and I can't remember her name. Hey, sexy. Hey, creepy stalker dude.
Oh man.
Dude eventually quit.
Good.
Right. But that's an example of a confident person taking that confidence and turning it around on a bully very quickly, making this situation where that guy was trying to abuse his power, and instead making him look foolish to the point that he left and I think that kind of thing our kids can use too, where we respond to that initial salvo, that little, in self-defense, they call it an interview, right? Where the person's just going to see if you're going to put up with this nonsense, and immediately just fire back with something that makes them seem foolish almost immediately. But anyway, there's a lot of techniques like that on your channel, and I encourage everybody to go check it out. And thank you so much for coming on today and sharing your knowledge with us.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
All right. Take care now. Stay safe, everybody. Bye for now.